Hey everybody, welcome back to another Angel live stream. I am Allie. I'm so excited to spend some time with you this evening. We are going to be talking about another Angel release. It is called, well, it's the duology of films that are sharing the courageous story of the Wurmbrands, Tortured for Christ, and the prequel, Sabina, Tortured for Christ, the Nazi Years. So we're going to be talking about both of those today. Sabina is already available in the Angel Guild for all guild members, so you can check that out now. And then Tortured for Christ should be releasing on Angel very soon. So we're going to talk about the one you can already see, and then we're going to hype you up for that prequel that should be coming out on Angel soon. So make sure to watch that. Keep an eye out for Sabina, Tortured for Christ, releasing in the Angel Guild. Today, it will not just be you and me spending time together. We are so excited that the director, John, will actually be here with us as well. We'll be talking about his experiences with the film and just kind of getting an inside look. Before we move any forward, I think we should just do that. Bring him on. So let's welcome John Grooters to the stream. Hi, John.
Hi,
How are
Allie.
you?
Well, I'm quickly looking up in the dictionary the word duology of films because apparently I've made a duology, but that's a great word that you used just casually in the introduction there.
Can
That's
I?
great.
I'm gonna out myself so hard here. Someone else wrote that word, and I was like, "Dual, that will make me sound so smart."
It did.
So
It
I
really
also
did.
looked it up. But thank you so much for being here today. I'd love to just start by having you introduce yourself to our audience at home. Tell them a little bit about you, if you're willing.
A little bit about me, audience at home. Yeah, well, my name is John Grooters. I'm married to Judy Grooters. We have a production company here in Holland, Michigan, which has been running for 24 years now. And I love to make films and lead worship and write. So the primary use of my time is writing and directing and editing film projects and then leading worship at various places with music. And we have a terrific team here at Grooters. We've been traveling around the world working alongside phenomenal teachers and opportunities to tell stories. And
Yeah.
maybe two of the highlights of the career for me have been when we worked with the Voice of the Martyrs who came to me to ask me to write and to direct the films Tortured for Christ. And then the second one we produced was Sabina.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we produced that one second, it chronologically is the first. So it's like we did the prequel after we did Tortured, which is why I'm glad that Angel has run sequel Sabina right now, that you can watch
Yeah.
Sabina if you're a guild member on Angel, and then you'll follow it up with Tortured. But it was out of order, which meant my actors had 5 years later to look 10 years younger, and that was a job for hair and makeup and
Right.
to make that a reality. But this project, that the films that you guys are showing on Angel, to me have been kind of a highlight of my career. The chance to tell such an incredible story of Richard and Sabina Wurmbrand,
Yeah.
and it really is a heroic story of with all the right beats,
Mm-hmm.
made about these kind of people who would never have let us make a movie about them, I don't believe, because their humility was so great.
Yeah.
But Richard and Sabina went on to be with the Lord in 2001, and I never met either of them in person. But in the last 5 years, I feel like I've spent a lot of time with both of them,
Wow.
reading their writings and casting actors
Yeah.
to play their parts, and just being inspired so much
Oh,
by their lives.
yeah. Wow. What was it initially that kind of drew you and your team into their story in the first place?
Yeah, so this little book called Tortured for Christ
Mm-hmm.
came out in 1967. And Richard Wurmbrand wrote this after he had been finally, after 15 years, released from prison and ransom. And he came to America and he wrote this little testimony. And at the time that this book came out, no one had really ever written a story from behind the prisons of the Iron Curtain, behind communist prisons. No one had
Yeah.
told it. And, he looks pretty worn by this time. He's not that old, but he looks pretty rugged.
Yeah.
And this little book apparently caught fire worldwide and became just a sensation and a bestseller. So, the Voice of the Martyrs, which is the mission organization that Richard and Sabina founded,
Yeah.
decided to do a 50-year anniversary project. And I had done a little bit of work at that time for the Voice of the Martyrs and had really appreciated them. And so they gave us the chance to create what they called a docudrama, which I really didn't know what that meant any more than a duality or what that
A
meant. So I just went and made a
duology.
film, a duology. That's a duology. So this was released for the 50-year anniversary of the book. And the book, I mean, to anybody watching this, if you've never read Tortured for Christ, it's a very quick read, and it is so raw and powerful and inspirational. It's hard to overstate it, and to turn it into a film, was just an incredible opportunity. I picked a little quote from it that's not in the film, but I thought I'd read you this. Richard
Yeah.
writes. He writes, "I've seen Christians in communist prisons with 50 pounds of chains on their feet, tortured with red-hot iron pokers, in whose throats spoonfuls of salt had been forced, and being kept afterward without water, starved, whipped, suffering from cold, and praying with fervor for the communists."
Wow.
This is humanly incapable. It is the love of Christ which was poured out in our hearts. I didn't look very long to find that quote. That's what the book is about, and
Wow.
it's an unbelievable challenge, and as he even just said, that an impossible challenge to really learn to love your enemies.
Right.
It sounds good in church, and it's an easy phrase to come off your mouth, but when they've been torturing you the way these brutal, sadistic communists did in the prisons post World War II, and the torture was like unimaginable and physical in every
Right.
way, and yet Richard and the other brothers and sisters in those prisons found a way to serve the Lord in that circumstance, and I think that's what has resonated so deeply with me and with everyone who has seen these films across these decades. They like lived out the Christian life at the highest level. I mean, it was Jesus on the cross that was the highest expression of his devotion. And if we find ourselves in that situation, we're carrying our own cross. And none of us want that. None of us
Yeah.
are going to say, yes, bring on the suffering. But if it ever comes, I really hope that the example that we have been given from this really cool couple, Richard and Sabina Wormbrand, will
Hmm.
remain sort of front of mind and in the front of our hearts, because that's how to handle it. And the
Yeah.
Bible says then, the world wasn't worthy of them. So really, really cool people. I loved making these
Yeah.
movies and trying to bring their story to the screen.
Yeah. Wow. What was that? I mean, I guess what was that process like for you? Obviously, you read about them and uh, tried to learn as much as possible, I'm sure. How was that for you then taking that to the screen and trying to help maybe guide the actors to get the right emotions, or I don't know. Can
Yeah.
you tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about what that was like?
Yeah. Well, one of the first steps in my process every time, when I'm working on a screenplay or developing a project, is you start looking at locations. And
Yeah.
when the assignment came, I had no idea. I had never been to Romania, which is their native country,
Yeah.
and so I didn't know we'd shoot this movie in Vancouver or in who knows, in Utah, and who knows where I'd shoot it. But my wife is a fantastic producer and a fantastic international producer, and one of her great skills is to really explore who's available in each country and then narrow down the options as production partners.
Mm.
And so one evening she said, "I think I've found a couple of guys you're going to like. Let's have a meeting." So it was 5 o'clock our time, and it wasn't until I realized that in Bucharest that was midnight. And I started off saying to these two guys, Ianut and Andre, "Guys, I just now realized it's midnight your time. So I'll keep this short because I'm sorry to keep you." And they're like, "There's no short. We will not keep anything short. We are here all night for you. You start to talk, we will start to
Aw.
talk. Do not worry." It was just this embrace right away that like we are not here to cut corners. And so I want to meet these guys. I want to see what the country and the land where Richard lived and worked really looks like. So we flew to Romania and got off that plane and got put in a car, and I wanted to see some locations, and I was just going
Yeah.
to consider, where do we shoot this film? And they stopped by the side of the road, and we hiked down through some waist deep snow to some former prison, and some army guy came by and unlocked the door, and we walked inside that, and I knew within 5 seconds, um, this film needs to be shot where it happened. And so that
Wow.
began a long process of location scouting in Romania. And I discovered that if you watch Tortured for Christ or Sabina, these are the prisons where they were held in many cases. The authenticity of these locations couldn't be higher. We were in the isolation prisons in Jilava. Jilava is still a working prison on one side. The
Wow.
other side, which is where we filmed, is no longer active. But you've got to go through the gates and check every cord, battery, cell phone, camera. Everything has to be. So we're filming in these very authentic locations. So I was in love with Romania right off the bat, and I loved the winter, and I loved the seasonal nature that it had. I loved to shoot in the winter.
Yeah.
But then, to your question, Allie, what about the actors? And so that was the next big challenge.
Yeah.
So I found a casting director that I liked, and we began doing auditions. And what a huge, I mean, to me, directing is 90% casting. That's the most important step in the process. If we get that right, the actors make us look good. And we did a lot of casting and prayed a lot too about finding this cast. But here's the thing about Bucharest in Romania, at that time, and then COVID shut it down for a bit, it was a very active theater community. You can make a living in that town as an actor
Oh,
because there's
wow.
big theater and small theater. And that was a huge advantage for me. I love theater actors in film. There some people don't, but to me the argument that
Yeah.
they over project or they're too big is silly. Every actor is a smart person and they can tell if the camera's right here or they're projecting to a big room. It's not that hard to figure
Right.
that out. So we began the process of casting, and I just think it was the hand of God that we met Emil Mondanak and Raluca Botez. And
Yeah.
I had said at the beginning of casting, when I was doing it, I'm not going to cast on the basis of physiology. I don't care if they look like they're picked. I want great actors
Right.
who somehow can convince me that they've got the intelligence and character and depth
Mm.
that these two have, which in my opinion is the hardest thing for an actor to do.
Yeah.
Almost any actor can play a drunk or can play a reprobate or can play a lesser version of themselves, but it's really difficult to convey on the screen somebody who's smarter than you and deeper than you.
Mhm.
And what do you draw from that? Well, both Raluca and Emma, I thought, had that quality. And so we cast them for the lead roles of Richard and Sabina in the first film, Tortured for Christ. And I mean, they killed it.
Yeah.
They just killed it. And like I said, I never really met them, but when we showed the premiere in Oklahoma to the Voice of the Martyrs for a big festival, and there was a lot of people at the premiere who did know them. And so I was
Yeah.
going to be put to the test a little bit, like, had we got them right? And these guys came up to us afterwards and said, not only did you nail their character, they even looked dead ringers for Richard and Sabina. So we got everything we could have prayed for
Wow.
in terms of performance and depth. So Tortured for Christ was completed and it was released and it played all over the world and
Yeah.
just powerful responses. And that was like the end of the chain. That was all that was asked for us to do. And I was so thrilled with the way God was using that movie and the deep challenge, like I said, that it gave all Christians to learn to what might it mean to love your enemy.
Right.
But I had one big question when we finished the process, and the question was, were Richard and Sabina born of virgins? Like, how did they
Mm.
get to be these incredible people? Because I was not
Right.
born of a virgin, and I do not love it when people are beating me with a stick or a poker.
Right.
And what's their backstory? And am I able to even relate to them? And so
Yeah.
I started reading more of their story, and it turns out their story, they were both as far from the Lord as you can be. Atheists, hedonists,
Mhm.
had wanted nothing to do with God, and they were successful and young and so I went back to the Voice of the Martyrs and I wrote the screenplay for Sabina, and I said, I think we need to do another film. I think we need to give people an on-ramp to this story. And it took them about a
Yes.
year, and then they came back and said, all right, John, do it. let's do it. So the first thing I did was flew back to Romania and called together my producing partners, Enid and
Mm-hmm.
Andre, and then those two lead actors, Emo
Yes.
Mandanak and Raluca Botez. And we sat in the studio and I said, if you two are up for doing another film, then I'm up for it. And if you're not up for it, then I can't, there's nowhere to go because
Yeah.
it's got to be you guys. And
Right.
they just both enthusiastically said, yes, we'd love to do another one. And that launched, another couple year process. Shooting during and around and through the COVID season was a
I know.
trick. But we did manage to do it. And I thought Emo and Raluca, again, carried the film. But then every single role, in my opinion, and you guys
Mm-hmm.
watch these movies, and to me, was just performed with the perfect tone. So
Yeah.
I'm thrilled with the cast. I'm just thrilled with
Oh,
them. And
yeah.
I've proposed now a third, so hopefully it won't be a duology. I would like it to be a
Oh,
trilogy, and we'll see if we do
yeah.
a torch for Angel or what. But I think there's one more story in this, but that's yet to be
Oh
determined.
my
But
gosh.
that's the story of how we got it done, Allie.
Wow. That's amazing. I was wondering kind of what the inspiration was for making it two films. So it was cool to kind of hear that. And I think it's cool like watching as like a viewer, a third party viewer, to probably also wonder those things, but then to hear that you were also like, wait, I want to know more about these people. Like I need to know where they came from. Um so thank you for pushing for it to be a duology. I feel like we're going to need to put a definition of that on the screen for our viewers.
No kidding. That's your podcast's keyword.
Next time the
It's
word will be
great that you said
trilogy.
as a viewer. I mean,
Yeah.
because the director's job is to be the viewer's representative
Right.
in my mind. And so, my job is to respect the time that a viewer would give the film.
Yeah.
And it's important to me to make a good film. It's important to me to respect the amount of time that someone would give to watch a feature. And we're all busy and there's so many options. And so even as I'm working on these projects and working with great locations and great cast and great crew, great cinematographers,
Yeah.
I've got a vision for the pace and the story that I think should always keep the viewer at the top of my mind.
Yeah.
And I kind of am a viewer too. Like I said, I didn't grow up with
That's
them. I
true.
don't work for their organization, but I'm a big fan, and so I love my own opportunities to engage Richard and Sabina
Yeah.
because they're just amazing people. And
Right.
and they're like the kind of people and the kind of life that we should look at. It's like when the Apostle Paul says, "Hey, yeah, go ahead and look at me. Go ahead and live like me." Like he's not being an arrogant guy. This is a scene where, for the first time, Sabina opens a Bible. She's been vehemently opposed to Christianity, and she reads the verse. She says, "It says here, if your enemy's hungry, give him something to eat. If your enemy's thirsty, give him something to drink." She says, "That's
Mhm.
ridiculous,"
Right. Right.
and she's right. And yet she's going to turn into the paragon of the kind of person who does that very thing.
Man. Wow. We were, I mean, I loved having your explanation of that scene. And while we were waiting for the live stream to start, we had some scenes playing, and you were talking about, your memories associated with those scenes. Can you tell me about, I mean, I know it's hard because there's two films we're talking about, but maybe just pick a couple. Any favorite scenes or memorable moments from filming that you can share with us?
Oh yeah. So we're working on this book. It's too big to show you, but we're working on this big picture book called
Oh, I
Behind the
love that.
Curtain, and we're close to getting this printed. So it has these huge photos, from scenes from the movie, if you can see that, and then
Yeah.
I write a little write up on the other side. So I'll tell you about a scene that's right in the front. You
Okay.
can I don't even know how to hold this, but you can kind of
We
see
can
this
see it.
woman.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's kind of glaring, but and then here, I'll show you another picture from this book. Here's a picture of a scene that was a real true story where there's a bunch of women who have been put into a prison camp by the communists. And Sabina was in this prison camp for several years. And they had to dig by hand a canal that was impossible to fulfill. In fact, the communists' own engineers said it'll never happen. If the communist engineers said that, they were shot. That's the way the communists work. So these women have to dig 10 cubic yards of dirt every day, regardless of the conditions. And one day, Sabina writes in her story that just because they were sadistic, they caught her and they mocked her as she was walking, and they threw her into the icy frozen river. And she broke 2 ribs hitting the rocks. So this is a scene in our movie, right? And so
Right.
we're looking, I told you about locations. Where do you shoot a location that looks like 1943 or 4, where you could be digging a canal that didn't have modern boats and ships and decks? So we looked and looked and looked, and I found this wonderful location. And I first scouted it, I think, in October. Yeah, I think that would be the spot. It was about 2.5 hours out of Bucharest. And so I went back and checked it again in December. All right, we have to do that. We have to build a stairway here. We have to build a parking lot here, all these things. And then I'm like, and what's the weather going to be like? Well, who can decide this? Who can tell you, just got to make sure that this will be fine. And the producers are like, well, it's usually fine. Our first day of shooting Sabina, I remember, was February 6th. I remember because I was watching the Super Bowl in the car in the middle of the night as we were driving out there.
Multitasking.
But I had gone out there 2 weeks, multitasking, 2 weeks prior to our location. I mean, everything, and 4 feet of snow, the river frozen solid. It was like the coldest winter they'd had in
Oh my
decades.
goodness.
And there was absolutely no way to throw Sabina in a river when it's solid ice.
Frozen.
There's 4 feet of snow on it.
So go ice skating.
And this is the first day of shooting with this new crew. This is our first day.
Oh.
And I'm 2 weeks out going, Lord, I have no answer for this one. You can't move this indoors.
Mm-mm.
What can you do for us? And I'm talking to Luigi Enciu, the production manager, and like, shall we drive south? Anyway, of course, what God did for us was 3 days before shooting, an unexpected thaw came over the region. And as you can see, the river melted. There was ice in the river,
Wow.
snow everywhere around it. It couldn't have been, Steven Spielberg couldn't have done this better. And God on day one, made a statement, not just to me, but to the whole crew. And Luigi and these communists, they're not communists, but they lived under the communists, these
Right.
seasoned veterans, all of a sudden looked at me and said, John, we know God is in this film. And that first day, we marched her along, and we had the scene, and it came out perfectly. And you really feel again the inhumanity that the communists at that time felt, and the cruelty for no reason, and Sabina in the midst of that, how she still reflected her Savior, no matter what they did to her. So that was a good start. That was day one.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and I feel like I'm sure, were there other moments like that you could feel God's hand in the process? I feel like I'm like day
Well,
one,
yeah.
this is a message that needs to be told when a
Oh,
miracle like that happens.
it keeps happening too.
Yeah.
I have said that both of these films, I just feel like we have the tailwind. Films are hard to make, and good films are very hard to make. Stephen Kendrick said that.
Yeah.
But we had so much favor on these films, and weather is another thing. There was one day. This was on Sabina.
Mhm.
Well, I'll even expand it a little bit farther. One of the props that we wanted in Tortured was a train.
Yeah.
Trains are pretty cool, especially period appropriate trains, and they're hard to get, right? To really get
Right.
a train. Well, there was a place that had like old trains in Romania. So I went there, picked out this engine and these 3 cars, and we would have to have a engine that actually worked, so it could be at the back and could push it in, so you would see the train arriving but not see the modern engine. Or if the train then had to pull away, that the thing had to ride like 50 miles to get around to get to the front of it so that it could pull it out.
Yeah.
But so for Tortured, we had decided we wanted this train scene. And it was expensive. It was we're on a budget, of course, on this film. And I'll just tell you, the cost of that train for a day was going to be $15,000.
Wow.
For us, was a big bite.
Yeah.
But it was a big scene and and it really sort of stole the period. And we decided, yeah, let's do it. About 3 days before that scene was scheduled to shoot, the government or whoever was in charge of that decided we have changed our mind. It is now $30,000. And
Oh, no.
and so we had a meeting, and I said, well, go tell them that Fortunately for our production, the director is also the writer, and I don't have to get permission from anybody. I'm just going to rewrite the scene, and they'll take off on a bus. So tell
Yeah.
them thanks, but no. Well, that was
Mm.
I guess maybe the right response because they, all right, never mind, 15,000 is fine.
They
And
were kind
so
of
we shot
testing
our
you.
train. They were, I mean, this happens, and
Yeah.
it was beautiful. Well, now fast
Wow.
forward until we're moving now into the next movie. And Sabina also has train scenes because
Right.
at the time that was really how people traveled around the country. And it looked great. So I picked some different cars this time, but back on the train scene.
Yeah.
So we were going to use this old train station that was no longer active, and the art department did a great job and decked it up. And I said to that same production manager, Luigi, like, Luigi, I got two different scenes that I'm doing today. In the morning, I want a foggy, overcast day because Richard and Sabina are saying goodbye to each other.
Yeah.
He's heading off to a camp in the mountains for tuberculosis. He's sick, and she can't go with him because she's working. And so they have to.
Right.
They're newlyweds, and they have to say goodbye. And it's a beautiful, heavy, even a little bit funny scene. So I said to Luigi, I'd like some overcast sky for that. But then the afternoon, after lunch, now we're going to show a different scene where 7 girls are being rescued by a police officer who was secretly working for the Wormbrands. So they come off the train in handcuffs. And they're led around the corner to where Richard and Sabina undo their handcuffs. Very dangerous. The communists are watching.
Right.
So, of course, in the morning, not a surprise, we get to the train station, everything's in place, and that overcast sky is just perfect. Just, helps our budget, helps our look.
Yeah.
Maybe one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when she's waving goodbye as the train's pulling out, and you just feel the pain, and she's not even a believer yet. And then we go for lunch, and we come out after lunch, and of course the sky is blue, and the sun
Oh
is
my
out.
goodness.
And Luigi walks across the place, and I just looked at him and just kind of smiled, and he just knows God is in this project.
My goodness.
So a lot of the Christian filmmakers I've talked to have stories like this, and we just know we cannot control weather, and weather can control us, budgets and timelines, and everything is so tightly scheduled when we're trying to make the most of every single dollar and every single day. And we just kept finding favor with God through the production and the shooting of this film.
Wow. That's incredible to hear about. And I kind of said this, but I'm like, it's an important story that people need to see. And so I'm not surprised at all that he would have a hand in helping make it happen for you guys and for the viewers.
That's a great point. I feel that way too, Allie. I don't think
Yeah.
it was us. I think this is maybe just my opinion,
Sure.
but I think God knew that Richard and Sabina were faithful every step of the way. And I kind of felt like we were riding on the coattails of their obedience. And it wasn't us. It felt like more than us and our team. We did our best and we worked hard at it. But the favor of God, it felt like he was just saying thank you to Richard and Sabina and saying to all of us, the worldwide church, hey, here are a couple of my children who did it right. And he helped us not only in the making of the movie, but now the distribution. Even being on Angel right now is just a gift. I hope people watch it and enjoy it. It's what movies used to do. They used to just lift up your spirit and inspire and take you places you didn't go before. And that's what these films do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so excited for those that haven't seen it to be able to go in and watch them. And you did a wonderful job. We were talking about, there was divine help and things and great, crew and cast, and everybody just came together and made such a beautiful film that tells a beautiful story. So great work on that. Have you seen any, since the films have been released, have you seen any impact or heard of anybody sharing the impact that it's had on them?
Oh, so much.
Really?
It's really been a filmmaker's dream to do this because the content is so powerful. And so that's what the power is in it. When Tortured for Christ came out, I was at a film festival for the first time, and one of the speakers who I'd never met but wanted to meet found out I was there. And Eric Ludi was his name. He's a great author, a great guy. And
Yeah.
Eric came running up to me and said, "Hi, I wanted to meet you. I'm Eric, and you made Torture for Christ, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Wow, I owe you. That has become my son's favorite movie, and he doesn't like any of the movies that I want him to like. He's young and smart, but he loved Torture for Christ." And Eric said to me, kind of father to father, I really appreciate what you have done for my son through this movie. That was really a fun moment to realize
Wow.
not just somebody that loves it, but that families and younger people. It's been shown to people who are in prisons. It's been shown to men who are in recovery that you can't be in a situation where you've had it any worse than Richard. And so
Yeah.
it's got a toughness to it that has been really fruitful in some of those painful situations. And I continue to work with a local ministry that is a recovery for men, an 8-month program. And we try to
Oh,
schedule a time here. This is our office here. We have a little small
yeah.
theater over here that has about 8 seats in it. But I love to bring them in and have the night where we put Tortured for Christ up on the screen, and then we have a chance to talk about it.
Oh, wow.
And some people like to talk about movies and some people don't, and some movies are worth talking about and some aren't. But I have learned that you don't have to have opinions or insights. It's just nice to ask the question. So tell me what you saw. Who can remember what they saw? And all of a sudden,
Mm,
people start not having to have insightful Siskel and Ebert analysis, but just,
right.
oh yeah, there was this scene where they threw Sabina in the river, and she broke 2 ribs and she crawled out and she said, God has saved me. And they start talking about these scenes, and you don't have to say anything. Um, and there was another time after I showed a premiere cut of Sabina to a group of men who had been gathered for a gathering in Colorado. 80 men were gathered. None of us knew each other and none of us knew why we were coming. But it turned out to be a really amazing and powerful gathering of people who were all doing very interesting things. And most of us getting to know each other for the first time. So, kind of I don't know, a very highly motivated group of people, and some of them had their families there. And so that at that event, they asked if they could show a pre-cut of Sabina.
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to show it. I'd love to get reactions." And so on a night in Windsor, Colorado, in a room holding about 120 people, we showed the film on a projected screen, and it looked great. And it was one of the first audiences that I had a chance to watch the movie. And I'm watching to see if people are checking their watch or if they're yawning
Yeah.
but I saw people on the edge of their seat the whole time. And
Oh,
they
man.
kept it on all the way through the end of the credits, which is what us movie makers always like. There's a reason we do
Yes.
things. And they
Right.
kept that movie on to the end of the credits, and the room sat in total silence
Wow.
for, I mean, 3 to 5 minutes. And and after that was one of the most powerful and impactful discussions as people started exploring what the movie had inspired in them, and what it was calling them to do, and challenging them to do. And
Wow.
as a filmmaker, you just not every project we're ever going to get even has that potential, but
Right.
their story does have that potential. And there's been many screenings like that where it's just so much fun to be a part of it. And it's not fair. I get to be the point person for a lot of this, and I gladly take that job, but I always want to
Right.
deflect and share this with the big crew of people, because so many people pour their hearts into this, the art department and
Right.
the wardrobe department and the camera team and the producers and the dialect coaches and the artists, and then you even get into the distributors and the marketers, and even why we're on this call today. So
Yeah.
I just get to represent a team that really worked well together and really
Yeah.
loved each other, and now have said to me, John, anywhere in the world, you name it, we'll be there. We would work with you again. And
Wow.
we sort of felt like, yeah, with this team working together, even with smaller budgets, like we don't have
Mhm.
Hollywood budgets, but we don't take that as any excuse to not put Hollywood quality on the screen and in the soundtrack, and the score is fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Um, so we just believe that, again, God sort of had a hand in everything we did, and we kind of credit Richard and Sabina for living faithfully for that.
Yeah. Oh, man. Was there anything, in like attending those screenings, was there anything, I don't know, like when you were working on the film, I'm sure there was like things that you took away from that that you were learning or that you were inspired by. Was there anything in particular hearing from those audiences or hearing what they saw that kind of moved you, um, maybe in a different way or just in an addition to what you had already felt?
I don't probably spend enough time going online and reading the comments. I mean,
Yeah.
just because you're on to the next thing,
Right.
but the comments about these films have been different than other films that I've done or that I've read about.
Really.
More personal, um, more profound. Um, we were nominated in 23 at the Crown Awards, which is the ICVM awards that are given out at the NRB convention.
Yeah,
NRB is
yeah.
the National Religious Broadcasters. And there was a night, and we don't do this for awards. I recognize that there's a pro and con to that whole game,
It's
but
okay.
Sabina was
Yeah.
nominated in 5 categories that night, and she won
Wow.
first place in all 5 categories and became the most decorated film in the history of the NRB Crown
Crown
Awards.
Awards,
No
right.
film had ever done that before, which meant yours truly
Wow.
got to walk up 5 times on the stage and try to think of something to, best actor, best picture, best whatever it was.
Right.
Each time recognizing that this is on the backs of the suffering, the faithful suffering of Christians in Romania under the Nazis in this case, and then later on the communists.
Yeah.
And even though a night like that is a night of fun and celebration, and part of the Christian life is truly joy. And I have a lot of fun with everything and am joyful. But part of the Christian life is also remembering that we are a suffering body. And that if one part of the body suffers, you know, all the body suffers. The hand doesn't say the foot, I don't need you. So in the world today, Voice of the Martyrs reminds us of the suffering of the church, and it's very real and very present. And so, in accepting an award, which is a fun time, but saying, use this to remember the persecuted church and
Right.
use this to remember that there's a season of joyfulness tonight, but there may be a season of suffering. And if it comes, it's just as holy for us to walk through it. And that kind of messaging, is what these movies are about. And I do try to carry that message even when I'm feeling like this film has engaged people on a entertaining level. First of all, it's
Right.
meant to be an entertaining film, and that's
Right.
what movies are. They're a night of adventure, and it's very important to me. And the world of the 1930s Bucharest scene and the Roaring Twenties
Mhm.
kind of coming out of it, and the dark clouds that are closing in,
Mhm.
and then the anti-Semitism. These are all themes that are very prevalent in our world right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a very relevant movie to right now, to today. And so I hope people embrace and watch this today and process it. And it empowers the church, inspires
Yeah.
the church, inspires family. Um, that's what I hope
Wow.
for.
Wow. Well, I want to remind those of you at home right now that you can go on to Angel and watch Sabina now. It's angel.com/Sabina. We threw up the URL there for you, and there's also a QR code for those of you on your TVs. So we definitely recommend watching it. It's beautiful. It's like you were saying, it's entertaining. It's a movie, but it's also just so special and tells a really important story. Um,
They
Sorry,
both
did you
are
have a question?
funny.
Yeah?
Well, just to say that we tend to think that our Christian saints must all be very somber,
Very,
um, and it's really not true. Both of them are
right.
very out there people.
Uh-huh.
Their books don't come across sort of scrubbed and polished. They're sometimes
Yeah.
they're kind of raw. Richard was a smart aleck, and Sabina, especially the way Raluca Botez portrayed her, was a fire plug, and I
Oh,
really
yeah.
love that about them. Like, I think any movie is usually carried a little bit farther if the characters that we're most identifying with, our protagonists, are people that embrace life and are witty.
Right.
And the best lines in these films aren't mine. I had to write lines, but the best lines are when I could just pull them out of their own writings. Because they were brilliant. Richard spoke 14 languages. He had a photographic memory.
Yeah.
He would have been an exceptional person in any field he went into. And he ended up giving all that giftedness that God gave him and pouring it back into the underground church and into ministry. And Sabina was the same. She was being educated at Sorbonne on scholarship in an age when women didn't go to Sorbonne. So,
Yeah.
I think they were special people the way God used them, but they were special people anyway, which is kind of what we
Yeah.
like with our heroes, right? The Bourne Identity or James Bond or whoever it is. Our heroes are a little bit larger than life.
Yeah.
And without me having to push this or falsify the narratives, I just needed to reveal the life they lived and the way they lived it, because they were unique people. And I think
Yeah.
that slight bend of witticisms and humor and unexpected. I mean, she's a little sassy, and
Yeah, she
anyway,
is.
I think that makes the film fun.
I think so too, and it also helps us relate to them um as we watch them. And um I don't know. I mean, you can relate to people when they're a little more, somber, or like you were saying, but it does add a little extra level when you're like, "Oh, they're also like human. They did these wonderful things, and it's teaching us this, love your enemies, and but also they're a person like we are." Which I
Well,
don't know.
yeah, I mean, the timing of those little moments, like this isn't like a hilarious moment, but she's about to say goodbye to him. I mentioned that train scene earlier. So he's been
Yes.
diagnosed with tuberculosis, which in those days was a 50-50 life sentence.
Yeah.
And all they really knew how to do was send you up and to sit and rest for a year in the sunshine and the clean air. That was the extent of treatment for the most part.
Yeah.
So she's saying goodbye to him, and she's going to give him a kiss. Now we're shooting this in the time of COVID, of course, masks and everything were such a hassle.
Oh
And
yeah.
in a little bit of an ode to the time we were filming it, she's about to kiss him, and he pulls up a handkerchief and puts it in front of his face and
Ah!
kisses her through the handkerchief, sort of a little mask. And she, with all sincerity, says, "Don't forget me." And he, with perfect timing, says, "Well, I'll try not to." And, that little moment,
I love it.
he didn't overplay it. "I'll try
Yeah.
not to," but he's being witty, even though she's
Right.
suffering. You'll be
Right.
fine. You the harder ordeal. I love how he cares for her, even though he's the one facing
Right.
the possible life sentence of the medical disease.
Yeah.
Just likable, likable
Yeah.
character.
Yeah. I agree. I love that just that little insight, like that it was the time of masks when you were filming. So just kind of it's
I
just
think I added that
mm,
scene later, just thinking we have to do this.
little ode to the times. So
And that's not to say that the darkness wasn't closing in for real. Okay,
right.
so the times were terrible, and if you were a Jew, right, as Hitler is on the rise, the
Hmm.
times are legitimately terrible.
Right.
And in the movie Sabina, we really fall in love with some people, and we really feel the terror.
Oh yeah.
And I can't even imagine, what so many people in history have faced, which is when the horde that's more powerful than yours is coming at you. So the
Mhm.
Jews in Warsaw, or in Yash, or in other places, and the Nazi army is coming. There's no defense. You're not going to outrun them, and
No.
Richard knows that that's the case. And so in both movies, I included this little detail because I think he did this for real. He wrote about it.
Yeah.
He said, "I have selected 366 verses from the Bible that tell us not to fear, one for each day of the year, and even one for leap year." And as it would be, he ends up being arrested in February 29th, leap year. And this is in the movie Tortured for Christ. And as he's being arrested and driven away, he's reciting in his mind the verse for that day. He had one for
Wow.
leap year. So, and then
Mhm.
in Sabina, you'll see he says, if they're coming, they're coming. Let's not view them as an enemy to be feared, but rather as a mission. And I just think that's the most powerful statement.
Yeah.
You know, if a real enemy, whether it's a riot coming towards your neighborhood or they've targeted your house or a gang or a foreign enemy. Um, and I'm not saying anything about the right to defense or anything else, but Richard's approach to this was let's look at them not as an enemy to be feared, but rather as a mission. And I
Wow.
think you get the sense if you get a chance to watch these two films that we really either do or don't believe in the Word of God. And we really do believe, as Sabina said, it says she's reading the Bible. He who would lay his life down for my sake will find it, and he who would keep his life will lose it. And she looks at us, she said, we believe this or we don't. As they're
Yeah.
heading into a checkpoint of Nazis looking for Jewish passports. And it got to the point where he says, yeah, you can kill me. You can shoot me. And if you do, I'll just go to be with the one I love. Like he had defeated fear
Yep.
through authentic faith. And that faith was tested when he gets thrown for 2 years into an isolation cell with no sound, no stimulation. He says, well, I quote the martyr Savonarola, who says, I thought I had faith. Now I'll really find out if I do.
Yeah.
I mean, he puts himself to the test. And in that cell, which was about as big as my desk. And we found these isolation cells in the Gilava prison. There was not even
Wow.
room for crew in there. Like the way to light and shoot that, it was such a small space.
Yeah.
We shot it from above just so that we could sort of see him with his rotation. And he wasn't allowed to speak or talk or have any, and he became so sensory deprived, and they actually would drug his food. Eventually, they really play with his mind. Sometimes they would
Yeah.
pipe music all day that says communism is good, God is dead, all kinds of torture. And other times for months and months and months, not a sound. The guards would wear socks so you couldn't even hear them. And he wrote about what he did later. He wrote that at 10 o'clock every night, he spent an hour in prayer. And then at 11 o'clock every night, he preached a sermon. And he would spend all day, because he was a pastor at that time,
Yep.
and he would
Right.
spend his day as if he was off. He had no Bible, he had no utensils, he had to just do this all in his mind. He would search the scriptures, come up with a theme, develop, and at 11 o'clock he would say, good evening, everybody, thank you for coming to church. And he would launch into a very formal service of preaching a sermon, knowing it was only the angels who were listening. Nobody knew he was in the cell. His wife was told he was dead. He was a number, not a name. As far as anybody knew, he was dead. And so the guard comes by, and this is a scene in the movie in
Right.
Tortured for Christ. So I hope I'm not spoiling anything. This
That's
actually
okay.
would be. I guess I won't even tell you the whole thing. I don't want to spoil the movie. But the guard comes by, and they peek through this little window in the door, and he sees Richard fervently praying. So he rips the door open, he kicks him in the gut, and bangs him in the head, rapes him up, takes him down the aisle, and we see in shadow he beats him.
It's so sad.
And the next night, there he is praying again, and he's bruised. Ugh. And the suggestion is this goes on every night. And eventually, the poor guard is getting tired because it's too hard to beat this guy every night. And so, in one of the best scenes in the movie, in my opinion, he finally comes back to Richard again. And now Richard's face is bruised. We had,
Yeah.
he's been beaten. And he opens the door, and the guard says, he just explodes. He says, Wurmbrand, your wife is in prison. Your son is an orphan. Everybody thinks you're dead. You'll never get out of this place. You'll never get out of this room. What could you possibly have yet to pray for? And Richard looks at him and says, I was praying for you.
Wow. I can't even imagine being that guard in that moment. How would you feel?
The guard in that moment was changed.
Yep.
We don't develop his story, but you can just see it. It's beautifully acted. Both of those guys were fantastic. And that scene still chokes me up. That's just a faith level that's so beautiful. That's Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's Richard's life.
Man, you guys at home, you need to watch these. You need to see this. John, what do you hope that people that haven't seen it yet, that we'll hopefully go and start with Sabina tonight or this weekend. What do you hope that they will get out of this film?
I Yeah, great question, Ellie. What comes to my head is don't watch this alone.
Mm,
Watch it with your family, with your husband, your wife. If your kids are old enough, it's not for little kids. And in each movie, we had to really be cautious and decide where's the line.
yeah,
The line in Torture for Christ. I mean, it's right there in the title. How far do we go with showing? If we don't go far enough, then the grace isn't quite as deep. If we go too far, we're making a horror flick. And
true.
we know our audience. And in Sabina, the same question: how far do we go with some of the levels of sexual temptation and where they were? I mean, Richard and Sabina are really open and honest about being human beings. And so as movie makers, we try to. So I would say, if your kids are maybe under 10, I would watch it yourself first, unless you really know your kids. But those are. But I would say if you can watch this with other people, like I said, I think the discussion is an opportunity for all of us to expand ourselves. And if beyond that, if we've done beautiful 6-week study guides for both of these films that are available from the Voice of the Martyrs. So there's a 6-week Torture for Christ series. There's a 6-week Sabina series where we meet modern Sabinas. It's just
Yeah,
amazing. We meet different women from around the world who, in our day and age, are living her life, who have suffered loss, who have been persecuted. So there's deeper ways to dive into this because their story is worth even more than a movie.
yeah, that's
But yeah,
awesome.
if it's on Angel, and I watched it on Angel, by the way, it looks great. I saw the way it came across, and I really don't have anything but, however people are able to stream their films. If you
Right.
can put them on your big screen, if you can play it through your big stereo, great. If you got to watch it on your phone, watch it on your phone.
Yeah.
Um, do what you can, and I would say, I would make you a promise. Um, the movie will not be a waste of your time.
Mm.
And that's the best thing I can offer you as a director is I will not waste your time. And if you disagree, write me a letter and tell me I'm all wet. But I hope you'll write me an email and say, hey, this is what came out of us watching Sabina, and this is what came out of us watching Torture for Christ.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear those things, and they inspire me towards our next projects.
Wow. Yeah. We'd, I mean, write an email, come back to this live stream, put it in the comments, tell us all about it. We'd love to hear from you guys. Um, at Angel, we really believe in, paying it forward. We pay it forward to have people go see things in theaters. We really want to, I don't know, we really push paying it forward. And I'm wondering if there's something that anyone in the audience can do to pay it forward for the Worm Brands and everyone that brought this story to life with these movies.
Yeah, there really is. Again, I don't work for the Voice of the Martyrs, but
Yeah,
I've never had an organization that I had any more respect for. What they do is so pure. So what you can do is for free, sign up for their magazine, and that comes to my house, and it sometimes I don't even want to read it because I just don't want to feel the suffering of the church in Vietnam or in Nigeria or in Pakistan or in North Korea. But VOM does an amazing job of bringing me those stories, and what they are always, or what I find out is they're not depressing. They're incredibly inspiring because these are
right.
people for whom Jesus is worth it. And so it just lifts me up. So I would say, again, this is me just being honest. You're gonna
Yeah,
if you go on the sabinamovie.com and sign up, they'll send you the magazine for free. So that's a way to pay it forward is get involved. That's why VOM made these movies so that you would
yeah,
be a part of the global persecuted church, so that you wouldn't forget them. So the movies are phenomenal, but these are the people who founded this ministry. They believed enough to start this ministry so that nobody would be forgotten in those prisons. And I think that's a way we can pay it forward.
wow, that's beautiful. That's amazing that they do that. Thank you for sharing with us. Um, we are coming to, the end of our evening together, and I'm wondering if there's anything else that is on your heart or in your mind that you'd like to share with our viewers at home tonight?
Um, sure. So we were joking before we started this podcast tonight. You were talking, what's your next thing? So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of funny that from the writer and the director of these Tortured for Christ, what I'm working on now that I'd love to recommend for people, I'll show you a
Yes,
picture, is the complete
please.
opposite. This is uh the sheeps.com. And it looks so silly. And I brought Virgil tonight to show you. Here he is.
Oh my
Hi, Virgil.
goodness.
And
Hi, Virgil.
I said I think joy is a big part of the Christian life. So we are
Yes.
launching a phenomenal new series called The Sheeps, Bedtime with the Sheeps. And this is brand new. We just released it. We just showed the first episodes at the NRB convention 2 weeks ago, and then last week at Christian Worldview. And
Wow.
our goal is biblical literacy for kids all over the world, and our strategy is humor and comedy, and then deeper layers of engagement. So we're really pumped about this, and I would love for people to go to thesheeps.com. There's an episode on there. I'd love to hear what you think of them, and we have 12 more in the hopper, and 6 are done, and another 6 are done,
Wow.
and the sheeps are hilarious, and you're not going to believe it's from the same twisted brain as brought you something so beautiful as Torture for Christ. But I think these are both legitimate aspects of the Christian life.
Right.
Joy is a fruit of the Holy Spirit, and that's how we're supposed to live. And Virgil and Glenda and the Sheep's Clan, they remind me of this every time we do another episode, and I love them. I do the
Oh
voices for
my
them. I write
goodness.
the stories, and it's
Oh,
it's
that's
it's two
awesome.
sides of the same coin. So when the day comes and the Lord calls us to carry our cross, man, Richard and Sabina, remind our brains, Holy Spirit, fill our presence, and might we still
Hmm.
be the fragrance of Christ. But with our kids and with our families, we want them to be living their lives, knowing the stories of the Bible. And I think the Sheeps is what we're working on right now, and
Oh
I'm
my
really
gosh, I
pumped about it.
love
So
it.
thank you for letting me mention them on air.
Oh, I'm so glad you did. And the like plushie's very cute.
Oh, he's great. We're
Oh my
got the whole
goodness.
family, Virgil, Glenda, Woolsworth, Butterball, Princess. I just brought him in because I think he looks kind of like me. See the resemblance?
Yeah, I see it.
I
I
do.
see it. You need some cool
They're
glasses.
fun, Allie. I'd like to see what you think of them.
I know.
As the
I'll go
creative
check it
director for
out.
Angel, I'll
I
send
will
you a
go
link
check
of
it
all
out.
of
Yeah,
them.
I'd love that. That's so much fun. Well, those of you at home, check that out. And then if you haven't already seen the film, that's also available for you to see. Again, the link's down below or the QR code. And thank you so much for joining us today. You are such a joy to talk with, and it was so awesome to hear from you and to kind of get more of an inside scoop on the film that's available and kind of the passion behind it, some of those fun stories and things that you shared with us. Thank you for being willing to share. We appreciate you.
Well, if we're in the film business, it's what we want to do. We want to tell stories, and we want to tell stories that amplify light.
Yeah.
I love the phrase. In
Yeah.
fact, it's funny. Before you guys came up with that phrase, someone asked me what I do with my life. I said I'm an amplifier, and we
Oh.
plug stuff in here, and then it gets louder, it
Yeah.
gets bigger, and that's the nature of what we do as producers. And I hope that together moving forward, there are other films we're working on, other series we're working on,
Yeah.
and I'm so proud of Angel for blazing new trails
Thank
and
you.
and building new audiences and inspiring us as filmmakers. And I'm very proud that Vision Video submitted these. I didn't submit them. Vision Video
Yeah.
submitted them,
Yeah.
and so I thank them for submitting them to you guys. And
Yeah.
just know we appreciate you and we support what you're doing. And
Wow. Thank you
I'd
for
love
that.
to be able to show new projects, which we don't have time to talk about right now,
I
beyond the
know.
Sheeps, but I have a lot of other projects. I'd love to share them with you, Allie, and with the
Yes.
audience at Angel. And even if God opens the door to make the duology a trilogy, then we would tell the third story, which will be another exciting episode of this podcast.
Oh my goodness, I love that. Well, I am so looking forward to hearing and seeing about all of your upcoming projects and the things you have in the works. I did just get notified that our live stream producer, he said in my ear here, he's like, I cooked something up for you guys. I don't know what that means, Oh, there we go.
Ah.
Duology, a pair of related novels, plays, or movies. So for those of you that, like us, had to Google that or haven't and just were going with it, there you go.
My definition is this, Allie, an
Yes, tell me all
incomplete
about it.
trilogy.
There
An
you go.
incomplete trilogy. That's what I'm going for.
I feel like
We all want to
we
do
should edit it
trilogies.
back and just have, I mean, there's AI out there now. My lips can say the incomplete trilogy. That will replace duology.
Yeah,
Just
Oxford
kidding.
Dictionary won't agree with me on that. So
Oh
thank
my
you, Kyle.
gosh. Well, thank you. That was fun. And thank you again. I'm so looking forward to seeing what we can work on together in the future. And um, and that's how you
Sweet.
know it's live, everybody. Awesome. Well, thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful night, John. It's been so good talking with you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Allie. It's been a pleasure. God bless you.
Thank you. And those of you at home, thank you so much for joining us. Um, Keep an eye out on Angel's social media and in the Angel Guild for more info on all things coming soon. We have enjoyed our time with you. Thanks for spending your evening with us here. And now we have a sneak peek? I have a note here. We might. I think that we do. So for you guys that are still here with us, here is a sneak peek from Tortured for Christ. Enjoy.
My name is Richard Wurmbrand. August 23, 1944. 1 million Russian troops entered my country. And then the nightmare began. You know what? I think you should perform the wedding. See you at the church in 1 hour.
Sabina Wurmbrand.
It is happening here just as it did in Russia.
This is madness. I have to stay strong. They are spitting in the face of Christ.
You got gum from the officers again? Did you give them a blessing?
And the flower. God bless you.
You do know that if I speak now, you will have no husband.
I don't need a coward for a husband.
Now streaming on Angel.